do most men fail when insulted or provoked? Because they explode. Their fury blinds them, their enemies rejoice, and their power crumbles. But what if you could master your mind, respond with precision instead of rage, and turn every attack into an advantage? The common man believes himself free, yet in truth he is chained, and the links that bind him are forged from his own impulses. Consider this a single insult, a mere glance of disrespect, a careless word, and he erupts. His face reddens, his voice trembles with rage, his hands shake. He believes he is defending his honor, but in reality, he is revealing his weakness to the very ones who sought to expose it. He becomes a puppet, his strings pulled by the hands of those who know how to provoke him. When you explode in anger, when you let passion surge without mastery, you are no longer a commander, you are the commanded. He who angers you controls you. He who insults you governs your next move. The crowd around you watches not with respect, but with hidden smiles, for they see a man mastered by discipline but by impulse. And nothing is more pitiful in the eyes of power than a ruler who cannot rule himself. History is filled with such examples. Princes undone by their temper, generals who lost campaigns because they struck too soon, men of promise reduced to ruin because they could not bear a slight. The strong may build fortresses, but the weak reveal their cracks through their reactions. A man can hide poverty, disguise ignorance, cloak deceit. But he cannot disguise the weakness of impulse. It bursts forth uncontrollably, a fire that burns not only his enemies but himself. Think of the duelists of old. When one insulted another, the weaker man would draw his sword instantly, lunging forward in blind fury. The stronger man, however, waited. He watched. He let his opponent swing wildly, tire himself, expose his flaws. Then, at the precise moment, with one calm strike, he ended it. The difference between mastery and slavery lies here. The fool moves with impulse. The wise move with intention. Even in your daily life, this law does not change. The merchant who argues with his client in anger loses both gold and reputation. The father who scolds his child in blind fury plants fear instead of respect. The worker who shouts at his master secures not dignity, but dismissal. In every arena, whether the marketplace, the family, or the court, it is not the provocation itself that defines you, but your response to it. And those who live chained to impulse are doomed to be ruled by others. Ask yourself, how many times have you regretted words spoken in heat? How many doors have closed because you could not resist the urge to strike back immediately? How many victories slipped from your hands because you allowed emotion, not reason, to decide your fate? These are not accidents. They are the tax that weakness demands of those enslaved by passion. Men often mistake their explosions for strength. They believe shouting louder proves authority. They believe swift retaliation proves courage. But it is the opposite. True courage is in restraint. True strength is in silence. The man who explodes shows the world he has been pierced. The man who remains unmoved shows he is untouchable. Which, then, would you rather be? Consider also the cunning of your enemies. The wise know that if they can stir your temper, they can defeat you without lifting a blade. A rival may whisper an insult, not because he believes it, but because he knows you will react. Competitor may provoke you in public, not because he despises you, but because he wishes the crowd to see you lose control. In these moments, when you fall into their trap, you do their work for them. You become the instrument of your own defeat. The weak believe freedom lies in expressing every feeling instantly, without filter, without thought. They boast, I speak my mind, as if blurting every emotion were a sign of power. But such men are not free. They are slaves of impulse. Their pride is their leash, their temper the chain by which they are dragged. The wise, however, know that freedom is not in expression, but in mastery. To control your tongue when it burns to speak, to still your hand when it longs to strike. This is liberty, this is sovereignty. A prince must learn this law early, for when seated on the throne, every insult is magnified, every slight exaggerated, every word watched. If he explodes at a whisper, he will soon drown in a storm of voices. But if he governs his temper, if he remains unmoved while others attempt to provoke, his silence becomes thunder, his calm becomes fearsome, his restraint becomes the sharpest of weapons. Even those closest to you, your friends, your family, your companions, may test you without knowing. They may stir your wrath in moments of wariness, and you will feel the chain of impulse tug at your neck. Will you let it pull you? Or will you break it, showing them that your mind, not your temper, is sovereign? Remember, a single outburst can undo years of labor. A word shouted in fury can poison alliances, ignite wars, destroy trust. But he who controls himself commands others. The one who resists the chain of impulse becomes not merely a man, but a ruler in every room he enters. He is untouchable not because he hides his emotions, but because he has made them his servants instead of his masters. The truth is simple, yet brutal. Those who cannot master their impulses will always be ruled by those who can. Your enemy's greatest weapon is not his strength, but your reaction. If you cannot master your first response, you hand him victory before the battle begins. And so, to build true power, you must begin with this first law: impulse is the chain of the weak, and only the strong know how to break it. In the theater of power, silence is sharper than the sword. The moment you are provoked, seize the pause. A measured breath disarms the agitator, for he expects chaos and receives calm. In this stillness you do not surrender, you sharpen. When men are struck with insult, when they are confronted with opposition, the instinct of the weak is to erupt instantly. Their hearts beat like drums, their voices rise like thunder, their hands tremble with eagerness to lash out. Yet this very eagerness is the dagger turned against themselves. For by rushing forward, they reveal their wounds. By answering too soon, they speak not with wisdom but with fire, fire that burns uncontrollably, consuming them before it reaches their enemy. But there exists another path, a rarer weapon, wielded only by those who understand the law of restraint, the calculated pause. Consider the pause not as hesitation but as strategy. When a rival insults you in the council hall, he waits for your instant reply, your heated words, your unguarded defense. He anticipates your explosion because that is what the weak provide. But when you do not answer, when you fall into silence, he falters, his expectation collapses. The crowd, instead of mocking you, turns their eyes upon him, waiting for the next move that never comes. Silence becomes your cloak, and in that cloak, you grow larger, more formidable, while he shrinks into foolishness. The calculated pause is not inaction, it is preparation. It is the drawing back of the bowstring before the arrow flies. The fool fires too soon and misses the mark. The wise waits, calculates, and strikes when the heart of the target is exposed. A pause does not mean weakness. It is the moment where strength is gathered, where reason sharpens, where the enemy reveals himself more than he ever wished to. Look to history, and you will see this law repeated endlessly. Kings who responded instantly to insults were dragged into unnecessary wars. Generals who rushed onto the battlefield out of wounded pride saw their armies slaughtered. But those who paused, those who delayed their strike until the ground, the timing, and the perception were in their favor, these are the ones who carved their names into eternity. Victory is not for the impatient. It belongs to those who understand that power ripens in silence. Even in daily encounters, the pause is your shield. When a merchant cheats you, your fury tempts you to shout, to accuse, to shame him on the spot. But in doing so, you reveal your desperation. If you instead hold your tongue, if you smile, if you pretend not to notice, you disarm him. You leave him anxious, uncertain, wondering what you truly know. In this pause, his mind turns against him, creating torments greater than your anger ever could. The pause is not passive. It is active psychological warfare. Think of the courtroom, the assembly, the negotiation table. Words spoken in haste cannot be retrieved. But silence is infinite possibility. While you remain silent, the other man projects his own fears, his own suspicions, his own guilt into that void. He wonders what you are planning, what you are hiding, what you are preparing. And thus, he defeats himself without your lifting a hand. The pause is also the moment where you become master over yourself. When provoked, your body seeks to betray you. Your heart pounds, your mouth opens, your voice strains. But by pausing, by commanding yourself to wait, you prove sovereignty over your own nature. You are no longer a beast reacting to stimulus. You are a ruler deciding the terms of engagement. The ability to pause when every nerve demands action is the difference between the common man and the sovereign. Understand this also. The calculated pause magnifies the weight of your eventual response. A word spoken instantly is forgotten instantly. But a word spoken after silence lands like a hammer upon the table. The longer the pause, the greater the anticipation, the more devastating the impact of your speech or your decision. Men lean forward, waiting. The tension grows. When you finally speak, the silence that preceded it amplifies every syllable. Your words become law, not because they are louder, but because they are rarer. Even in personal conflict, the pause is your ally. When your enemy shouts at you, expecting a return of fire, remain calm. Look at him, but say nothing. Let him burn his strength. Let him reveal his entire arsenal of words. He will grow restless when he sees you unmoved, for your silence is an abyss he cannot conquer. Then, when the time is right, when his fury has peaked and collapsed upon itself, you may choose to respond, not with rage but with precision. One calculated sentence, one measured reply, will cut deeper than 1,000 uncontrolled words. There is a reason why in the courts of princes, those who spoke least often were feared most. For chatter betrays anxiety, but silence hints at hidden strength. The man who answers every insult instantly is seen as a servant of his emotions. The man who waits, who chooses his words with care, is seen as master of both himself and the room. Even those who hate him cannot ignore the force he radiates. The pause also changes the battlefield of perception. When you explode, the crowd remembers your fury. But when you pause, the crowd remembers your composure. Composure breeds respect. Respect breeds authority. And authority breeds obedience. Men will follow not the one who rages, but the one who holds his fire until the decisive moment. The calculated pause is not simply the absence of action. It is the presence of power. It is a weapon sharper than steel, for it cuts not flesh but perception. It creates unease in your enemies, respect in your allies, and sovereignty within yourself. Those who have mastered it do not rush to respond. They make others wait for their response. And in that waiting, power grows. Wise prince does not bury his fire, he directs it. Anger can blind, but in the hands of the master it illuminates. Transform your fury into strategy. Let the insult become fuel for cunning plans. Let the humiliation become hunger for dominance. What is chaos to the masses is a forge for rulers. Men are often told to suppress their anger, to swallow their fire, to bury their fury in silence. But to bury passion is to waste power. Anger, when suppressed, rots inside, corroding the spirit, poisoning judgment. The man who merely hides his fury is no stronger than the man who explodes with it. Both are slaves, one to expression, the other to repression. But there is a higher path, one known to the rulers of men. Anger is not destroyed, it is transformed. It is not wasted, it is weaponized. When insulted, when humiliated, when dismissed, the ordinary man seeks instant revenge. He spits his venom quickly, hoping to find relief. But his relief is brief and his weakness is permanent. The great man, the strategist, the ruler, he does not waste fury on explosions. He refines it into energy, he channels it into design. Every insult becomes a blueprint, every slight a stone for building, every humiliation a seed of conquest. Imagine a man scorned in the court, mocked openly before the eyes of others. The fool would lash out instantly, cursing, fighting, throwing his dignity into the dirt. But the wise prince would smile, storing that fury deep within. He would not deny it, he would not erase it, he would refine it. In the nights that followed, that fury would burn not as chaos, but as focus. He would sharpen his plans, gather his allies, perfect his schemes. Then, at the appointed hour, he would strike, not with trembling rage, but with precise power. And the one who mocked him would fall, never understanding that his own insult had created the very weapon of his undoing. This is the alchemy of power, turning emotion into strategy. Fire can burn a city to ash, or it can forge steel. The difference lies not in the fire, but in the hand that wields it. Your anger is no different. If you let it consume you, it destroys you. If you master it, it shapes your destiny. Consider the generals of war. A rash commander struck by fury charges his men too soon, and his army is slaughtered. But the cunning commander takes that same fury and transforms it into ruthless patience. He channels his hunger for victory into tireless preparation. His anger drives him to learn the enemy's weakness, to refine his discipline, to wait for the opportune moment. When he finally strikes, his fury is no less fierce. But it is guided, it is hunned, it is unstoppable. In your own life, the principle is the same. When you are insulted, you may explode and lose both respect and opportunity. Or you may bury it and rot in silence. But the greater path is to weaponize it. Let the sting of the insult sharpen your resolve. Let the bitterness of failure become the fuel for relentless improvement. Let the humiliation you suffer be the seat of your authority tomorrow. Those who wrong you unknowingly become your teachers, for they hand you the very energy you need to rise. Do not think that to channel anger means to smile forever, to turn the other cheek endlessly. No, the wise prince does not forget. He remembers every slight, every betrayal, every wound, but he does not act in haste. He acts in time. His fury is not erased. It is stored like an arrow in the quiver, drawn only when the shot cannot miss. Such a man terrifies his enemies, for they know he is not careless. His fire burns cold and deliberate, and that is the fire that consumes empires. Even the smallest slight can be forged into greatness if handled with cunning. A word spoken against you, a laugh at your expense, a door closed in your face, these are sparks. Most men let sparks die in the dirt. Some let sparks ignite fires that burn their lives to ruin. But the rulers of men gather these sparks, place them in the furnace of their will, and from them forge weapons, crowns, and empires. This law demands discipline, for it is easier to explode than to channel. The weak demand instant release, but the strong demand lasting victory. The weak seek to prove themselves in the moment, but the strong seek to conquer in the end. And so the insult that destroys one man becomes the foundation of triumph for another. The same fire that consumes fools builds the empire of the wise. Your fury is not your enemy. It is your most dangerous ally. If it controls you, it ruins you. If you control it, it crowns you. The world belongs not to those who feel nothing, but to those who feel everything, and have the mastery to transform those feelings into calculated power. Anger, pain, humiliation, envy. These are not weights that drag you down. They are fuels that can lift you higher, if you know how to burn them with purpose. So the next time fury rises within you, do not silence it, and do not let it explode. Capture it, refine it, shape it. Let it drive you not into madness, but into mastery. For he who can transform fire into steel, he who can turn fury into weaponry, becomes untouchable in the courts of men and undefeatable on the battlefield of life. The highest throne is not of marble, but of the mind. A man who conquers himself is beyond reach of mockery, beyond control of enemies. He responds not as a servant of anger, but as a sovereign of calculation. Men often believe sovereignty is found in crowns, armies, and riches. They imagine mastery lies in commanding others, in owning estates and being praised by the crowd. Yet all of these are fragile. Wealth can be stolen, armies can be betrayed, thrones can be toppled. What remains invincible is the dominion over oneself. The man who commands his own mind, who bends his emotions to his will, possesses a kingdom that no rival can invade. Self-mastery is the true sovereignty, and without it, all other power is illusion. Look at the rulers who fell, not by the sword of their enemies, but by their own ungoverned passions. A prince who could not govern his appetites soon found himself despised. A general who could not master his pride led his army to ruin. A statesman who could not silence his tongue in anger destroyed alliances that had taken decades to forge. These men believed themselves sovereign, yet they were slaves. To desire, to rage, to pride. Their thrones were merely gilded cages, and their crowns shackles disguised as ornaments. To master yourself is to become untouchable. The man who governs his mind is immune to manipulation. The enemy who seeks to provoke him finds no weakness. The flatterer who seeks to seduce him finds no easy vanity to exploit. The temptation that lures others into ruin cannot sway him, for he sees it clearly and resists it without struggle. This is not the coldness of a stone, but the discipline of a ruler who has made himself his first subject. He rules himself as a sovereign rules a kingdom, strictly, wisely, without compromise. Consider the image of two kings. The first commands a vast army, but he cannot master his temper. A single insult from a courtier drives him to violence, and soon his throne is surrounded by enemies who exploit his recklessness. The second king rules a smaller land, but he governs himself with iron control. He is slow to anger, deliberate in speech, measured in action. His enemies cannot red him, his allies cannot sway him, his people cannot shake him. In time, this second king extends his dominion not because he had more soldiers, but because he had more mastery. His sovereignty of self became sovereignty of land. This principle extends to every man, not just to princes. In the household, the father who cannot master his anger loses the respect of his children. In the marketplace, the merchant who cannot master his greed is soon ruined by reckless ventures. In friendship, the man who cannot master his envy poisons every bond he touches. Everywhere, those who fail to conquer themselves are conquered by the world. But the man who governs himself stands unshaken amidst storms. He becomes a fortress not of stone, but of mind. The art of self-mastery is not to kill your emotions, but to harness them. The sovereign of self does not feel less than other men. He feels more, but he chooses which feelings shall command his actions. He may feel rage, but he decides when to release it and upon whom. He may feel desire, but he directs it into ambition rather than ruin. He may feel fear, but he uses it to sharpen his caution rather than paralyze his will. This is sovereignty, to treat the passions not as masters but as servants, to bend them into instruments of power. In the councils of power, men are constantly tested. Rivals whisper, enemies insult, allies betray. Those who lack mastery reveal themselves instantly, and once revealed, they are destroyed. But the man who is sovereign over himself remains inscrutable. His silence terrifies, his calm unsettles, his patience confounds. He is the one who cannot be predicted, and thus cannot be defeated. Even when cornered, he does not collapse into fear. He calculates, he endures. He waits for the opportunity to strike. His sovereignty of mind makes him the ruler of every situation he enters. Understand that sovereignty is measured by how loudly you command others, but by how firmly you command yourself. Many shout orders but are slaves within. They are enslaved by their appetites, their habits, their vices. They cannot resist wine or lust or rage or vanity. Such men may rule for a season, but their reign is already doomed, for their enemy does not need to fight them. Their own nature will destroy them. The true sovereign, the one who governs himself, builds his reign upon unshakable ground. His fortress cannot be breached, for its walls are within. To be sovereign over yourself is also to hold power over time itself. The man without mastery lives only in the moment. He reacts instantly, burns instantly, regrets instantly. But the man with sovereignty over his mind stretches beyond the moment. He can delay gratification, endure discomfort, suffer insult today for greater power tomorrow. This ability to stretch beyond the instant is the essence of mastery. While others live like animals, thrashing, clawing, consuming, he lives like a ruler, bending time to his advantage. Even in defeat, the man who governs himself remains sovereign. Armies may be lost, fortunes may vanish, thrones may fall. But if his mind remains unshaken, his sovereignty remains intact. He can rebuild because he has not lost his true kingdom. He can rise again because the foundation of his power lies not outside but within. Those who rely only on external power are ruined when fortune shifts. But the man of self-mastery carries his kingdom wherever he goes, unmovable, unassailable, eternal. And so the highest throne is not carved in marble nor gilded in gold. It is seated in the mind. To conquer yourself is to conquer the world, for all the world's assaults depend upon your weakness. If you deny them access to your weakness, you deny them victory. The man who has mastered himself stands sovereign over his passions, sovereign over his reactions, sovereign over his destiny. The weak man believes power is found in the sword, the coin, the crowd. But the wise know the battlefield of destiny is the mind. Impulse is the chain of slaves, and he who explodes is already defeated. The pause is the weapon of princes, for in silence power ripens. Fury, when mastered, becomes the fire that forges strategy and bends enemies to ruin. And the highest sovereignty is not in thrones or crowns, but in the dominion a man holds over himself. To respond, not explode, is the essence of rule. To command your own mind is to command the world. Remember this law of mental power. Men who master themselves cannot be ruled, and men who cannot master themselves will never rule.